Afternoon. Out of sorts. All right. Thank you for being here. Got a fairly light run of show for you today, and happy to take your questions. First, a Garden Street project update. If you've been driving around town, you've been seeing the signs. I remind all of our citizens, obviously, that we have many key thoroughfares or arterials that are run by the state. So we get questions lots of times on potholes or certain things that are on state roads. We obviously work with FDOT, but Garden Street is one of those state roads, and it is beginning April 1st. You'll start to see the lane shifts beginning with that repaving and resurfacing project. It'll affect some of the parking along the whatever section they're working on. If there's parking on Garden Street, it could impact it with the lane change. And the current eastbound lanes and the median lane will be closed to construct new water mains, sanitary sewer mains, and stormwater drainage on the south half of Garden. So stormwater improvements, surface improvements, a lot of that work that's been in line to take place for quite a while. This is not a new project. Frankly, I bet this predates this administration in terms of the overall project. But that work will be taking place starting April 1st. Good update on park sidewalks. Our crews are getting ready to work in the coming days in several of our parks to grind down some of the uneven spots, whether it be from roots, from anything else, making it more ADA accessible and compliant. So we're trying to remove those trip hazards and make for an overall more enjoyable visit for folks. Those parks include Lions Park, Toledo Square, Zamora Square, Granada Square, Pintado Park, and La Mancha Square. And obviously this work is weather dependent, but just so you know, if you live by any of those parks, and all of these are kind of peppered throughout the city, not in one particular area or one side of town, but we're the ones that had the greatest need. That work is going to go ahead and start, so excited to get that done. We've had a hiatus between election time and just kind of getting our feet under us. In the new year with town halls, we're getting those cranked back up. Our goal is to have one roughly, depending on schedules and everything, monthly with our 7 districts. So we're picking up kind of where we left off in 24 with District 4 with Council President Moore, and that is next week on April 3rd at 6:30 at Vickery. As he joked in the agenda conference, is technically in Councilwoman Breyer's district because it's across the street from his district. So it's a road game for him in District 1, but it's as close to District 4 as we could get. So 2130 Summit Boulevard, and of course we'll have the other town halls in the coming months. We're getting ready to celebrate the Sanger's 100th anniversary here in Pensacola. This has been a conversation happening now for well over a year when the committee first got with us, and Amy Miller has been our point of contact at the city in support. Obviously there's other folks that are really taking the lead. I appreciate them for taking that on, but we've been kind of with them every step of the way to try to facilitate what happens for the 100th anniversary. So it opened its doors for the first time on April 2nd, 1925. And next Wednesday, we're joining the Pensacola Chamber and the Friends of the Sanger, who've been, again, a great help to us in commemorating that opening. So at noon on April 2nd, we'll have a ribbon cutting and some birthday cake. I don't know how the building will digest it. We'll figure it out, but I think the humans will. Guided tours from 1 to 5 for folks. And we're screening the silent movie, The 10 Commandments, which was the first show to play at the Sanger 100 years ago. At 6 o'clock. So we got stuff all day on April 2nd. And then on Sunday, April 6th, there'll be a street party in front of the theater from 12 to 6 p.m., including various performances on a main stage setup outside. There'll be some smaller side shows and some food trucks. And then there'll be 2 screenings from 4 to 7, back-to-back 2 screenings of Phantom of the Opera. And it's the silent version with the organ providing the soundtrack. So if you know about the history of the organ, it is one of the very, very few, I don't remember the exact number, but it's very unique and very rare that we have the organ operating that we have. And so Alex Gartner, our children's chorus, and musician extraordinaire, also knows how to play the pipe organ, will be doing a demonstration and give a special introduction. So exciting events coming up for next week for a very fitting 100th anniversary. We also have an update on the welcome sign. The plan is actually to have it wrap up this week. That you'll, if you haven't already, I've not driven down there this morning, but I'm expecting at any given day you'll start to see the pieces of the sign be put up. And then our plan right now, we're working through details. We'll be in contact with you guys, the media, to flip the switch to turn the lights on a week from today, and having a short ceremony for some of the city staff. This is not necessarily, we'll be relying on our media partners to be our pool reporters. There's some safety concerns of where it is. This is not going to be we are not closing the bridge or the road for this. So, but we certainly want to make sure all of our public works team and some of those folks, so it might be kind of a smaller group, and again, we would certainly appreciate having some media presence out there. You can take your lives with your cameras at your own risk and get out there with us and make sure that we share that opening and turning of the light. So maybe if somebody's driving off the bridge right at 6:59 p.m. or whatever, they'll have a front row. But so if you see that and wonder why we're not doing a large event open to the public, obviously you can understand it's in the middle of two very, very busy state roads. So we got to be careful about that, and certainly I think FDOT is expecting that we're pretty careful about that as well. Don't have exact times yet, but as of right now, weather dependent, we're shooting for next Tuesday evening to turn the lights on. Let's see, last thing. We were made aware, there's been a couple of these issues actually popping up independently about solicitation. We've had one issue that's coming across our desk a little bit downtown with a local nonprofit. And also we've just gotten some reports around the Cobb Center area of people going door to door asking for uniforms. Cobb Center nor the city is doing that. So if it's being represented that the Cobb Center or the city is going door to door fundraising, we do not do that. And it was really to bring up the greater point that we have solicitation permits in the city. So if someone's being asked for a donation or for money, you can always ask, if you're not sure or you're unsure about it, to ask to see the city solicitation permit. So there are rules of what you can and can't do, and we go through all of that with them. So number one, none of our community centers or our Parks and Rec department will ever be going door to door asking for money. And number two is, if you see that, or if it's something that you feel like you're not sure if you should report to us or to 311 or not, the safe first question to ask if somebody comes to your door is for a city solicitation permit. And if that's not something they have, then you can feel confident that that's not supposed to necessarily be taking place. So just before that becomes too rampant, I certainly, we don't want our citizens being misled or taken advantage of in any way. We're happy with them to donate their money anywhere they would like, but we want to make sure it's not any misrepresentation of city operations. Lastly, just wanted to bring up, I know, or I could probably wait for one of you to ask a question about Chappie James. We're trying to, figure out. If you ask me where it was, I would say I don't know. It continues, I know, to toil around in ambiguity, but we're starting to make some efforts of seeing. I just got to thinking about how do we get to some finality here. Obviously, as the city, we could continue to be in the role that we're in right now, which is kind of at the ready. We've procured, or we have allocated the funding now, probably going on 3 years ago, that we are going to give to this project. We can wait on the county and the TDC to figure out what they want to do, or what they want to call it, or how they want to define it. The goal is outcomes, as I always say, and solutions. I have our team now, and we've reached out to BMP. We've reached out to Chappie James Foundation this morning, and we're going to try to look into see if there can be some harmonious landing place, perhaps at BMP. I don't know what the appetite at Veterans Memorial Park. Sorry. I don't know what the appetite is. This is just something I've tried. Woke up with a light bulb and tried to see if the goal is commemoration of Chappie James, which is much deserved. We already have a museum. Certainly, I'm in general support of honoring, his legacy and what he accomplished in his life. Can we come to some kind of solution where we already have a location that you could certainly consider a memorial plaza or something closer to a museum? Does that give some clearer definition to TDC? I don't know. I haven't followed that as closely maybe as you guys have. Could it help mitigate cost? I'm not sure exactly where the funding stands right now. I would think so. And not only would there be the investment that we've already procured, but also remember we have about a $750,000 investment into not only public restrooms but an outside learning area and all of that wouldn't be in the current proposed plan with Chappie James. And so is the goal to have to have those two facilities within a mile of each other? We've just kind of had this aha moment of saying, maybe that's something we can explore. So we haven't had, I would think the next step would be a meeting with the parties, with the VMP, with the Chappie James Foundation. Certainly would be interested to see what TDC or BOCC's opinion is on that. But that's something that, as of right now is just an idea from this building. But we were trying to go through what we think the pitfalls might be, and we were kind of feeling like we could still commemorate. It could be at a lower and more controlled cost. It could be at a location that's already certainly done an amazing job of maintenance, of upkeep, and of honoring our veterans and our military members. So maybe that's a solution. So I don't know. I could come to you next week and say, just kidding, that isn't going to work. But that's a conversation that we're having in the building, and I certainly think that would be something that should be worth entertaining with all parties involved. So we'll see how that goes. And that is all I've got. So happy to take your questions.
Did you watch the commissioners' meeting this morning on this subject, or are you just channeling?
No, actually, I really didn't. I'd actually planned to be there. I guess they'd added an item to talk about. I had my morning open to get stuff done because I had initially planned to be there to discuss Baptist. Then it wasn't on the agenda, and then I guess they ended up discussing Baptist. So certainly we hope for the county commissioner's support. I wasn't not there out of protest. I believe Baptist was there. So my expectation was we were going to have that conversation in their following meeting, and I certainly planned to be there. But there was just a little confusion on whether that was going to be on the agenda. Then it wasn't on the agenda. Then it was added. So, any support that we could get for the Baptist project. But no, I haven't heard 1 second of, or even been briefed on any of the conversation other than I think maybe somebody sent me a text that Baptist got discussed. I think that was the only thing that I'd heard.
On the matter
feel free
of Chappie
to
James, the commissioners appeared to be uncertain among themselves over where they stood with all of this. But several of them mentioned they had been in to see you about this and some other things. Mm-hmm. And Commissioner May seemed to want to bring it all together. He said, we've already voted on this once. We've approved it. TDC can do whatever they think is appropriate. But we still don't quite understand where the mayor is on all of this. And his attorney, Rogers, said she was meeting with your attorney, I think tomorrow, to understand more about what the city owed the county or vice versa.
First of all, my idea is in no response to anything. I haven't. That's the first briefing I've gotten on what was talked about today. But my feeling is this idea about perhaps moving to a more fitting, a more cost-effective venue that is already dedicated to, I think it makes a lot of common sense to say, let's have one of our community's greatest military heroes honored in Veterans Memorial Park. I think that makes a lot of sense. Veterans Memorial Park we're having conversations about a stewardship agreement that would not just be half of the park, but the entire park. And remember, there are other things in play. There are looming under the current agreement, executed agreement that we have with the Chappie James Foundation. It technically ends in June. So now it's because we had worked on it so many months ago. Now, of course, we would have intent to continue. If we were seeing progress, obviously, in no way are we saying if it gets to June and it's not, we don't have plans or we don't have the proof of funding like it calls for in our agreement, that we would end it. But the point is we're coming quickly up to an amendment on the executed agreement regardless. So back to this, well, where does the city stand and county stand? I'm so discombobulated by what we're calling it or where I stand is I am in support of seeing this happen. If the county doesn't want to support it financially, and that means it doesn't come financially viable, I fully respect the decision of the TDC and or the county commission. I stand in, I don't offer an opinion on what they should do. I'm not a lawyer. I have no opinion on whether I believe that a plaza, a museum fits or doesn't fit funding. That is for them to deal with, and I'm not analyzing that. All I'm saying is I'm still open, even with this idea I presented to you, I'm still open to the idea of having it happen as it's already being presented. And perhaps with some maintenance money baked into an amended agreement, that we would do whatever jump roping we needed to do that's being called for by the county. But remember, if it's a plaza, then we have to own it. If it's a museum, we don't have to own it. So we actually wouldn't have to go, is my understanding. So, which could be wrong. So we are still at the ready to help, and that has not changed. And we have not ever been presented with anything from a logistical standpoint in the agreement that is a non-starter for us or we would not entertain. We have an agreement that's impending, needing an amendment no matter what, right, coming up in June. And then secondly, we have an extension, a possible extension of the airplane that the agreement is with the city on the airplane. And so the Air Force has been more than amicable. When you take donation of this, as I've learned, which I believe was in February of 2022 is when the agreement was executed, 8 months before I started in this job, you're supposed to have it up in 90 days. So I think the Air Force has been more than amicable for years. That's the expectation, is that you would have, when you take donation, that you'd have it up. Now, the foundation's paid money to maintain and improve. There's still some improvement that needs to happen to the plane. So, I guess I'm telling you all of that to say that's where this idea is kind of formulating from a cost standpoint, from a maintenance standpoint, I'm trying to come here and offer a solution in a situation that kind of feels like it needs one. I mean, I right now, because if not, we're going to be mired, it feels like, for quite a while in this discussion that we're not part of about who can or can't fund it.
Following up on that, so if I understand you right, you haven't talked to the foundation or the county about this idea at Veterans?
We've had initial conversations with the VMP board.
Okay.
Right. And just quickly, just kind of a temperature check of, is this something? And so that's why I said make no mistake, we are not saying this is what we're gonna do. But this is the mayor trying to think outside the box and come up with a solution that gets us there on funding, on commemoration, on lowering the cost of funding, on enhancing whatever definition of a museum or plaza there is. I would think is probably a better tourism case, not at a new site, but actually at a Veterans Memorial Park. We were designated as a World War II city. That's where we expect to be designating that as well. So, and the VMP does an amazing job of curating that. And what do? They have kids come. They have events there. I mean, to me, in my mind, that's where Veterans Day is. That's where Memorial Day is. So it's not because I have to do this with conviction. It's just I'm trying to be solutions oriented, and I'm trying to check as many boxes as possible to try to get this thing to the finish line, and we'll see what happens. So I'm glad you asked that question, because I want to be clear. I'm not saying that's all we'll entertain, or that this is me coming out and trying to figure something out to make this happen.
And then you mentioned you're talking about an expansion of the park, the Veterans Park that they cover. Would that mean you could put the memorial on the Admiral Mason side?
There was already previous discussion, irregardless of Chappie James, about the expansion of the stewardship agreement. So right now, the stewardship agreement of Admiral Mason is on one side of the park that you could clearly tell, the western side of the, Eastern side of the park. Yeah, sorry. Directionally challenged right now. So the eastern side of the park. Now, there's been conversations about taking over the entire park and what those ramifications are, what's the expected level of maintenance, all of those general conversations we would have. So that's something that we're already in conversation about. So I'd hate to get in front of VMP and say, this is where obviously they're going to play a key role in how large is it, how large does the statue still need to be as large as it is now if it's now in VMP? All of those conversations, I would hate to say, this is where it should go here and all that, because, they are the stewards of the memorial side of the park. I would imagine that if this were to get any legs, then we would have very clear conversations with them about where physically it would go.
Is them taking over the stewardship of the agreement of the whole park, does that mean not even just the Chappie James monument, but like future markers, memorials they put out there could go on both sides?
I'd have to look at the language. It's not finalized. I think it's just been conversation at this point, and so I don't know yet. It hasn't become substantive, at least to my desk yet, about what the ramifications or the expectations of a full. All we know is that they are interested in stewardship of the entire park, and those are probably details we would work through. But because that's a conversation, irregardless of Chappie James, it's probably a good time to have this conversation, right? If we're talking about trying to kill several birds with one stone. And again, remember, we've gotten the state funding and that is fully underway, for public restrooms, accessible restrooms, and kind of an outdoor kind of learning center where you could have a covered meeting or ceremony type of thing. That's part of this project that we're already working on as well, that only enhances, I think, the value of putting additional structures there. So and I've had a commissioner indicate, how does the city feel about what if it was put in the county? I think that's been mentioned maybe before. I'm okay with that too. If the county commission deems that there's a better location somewhere else that's not in the city, I think I speak for all of us when I say I'd like to bring this to finality one way or the other. That's where I think I'm at. And if that means it doesn't happen or they don't fund it, I respect their decision. If they do fund it, I respect their decision. And I'm just trying to come to the table solutions oriented to say, well, maybe if this is a solution where you don't need as much money, that makes it easier for the TDC or the BOCC to defend. I do think that VMP is a tourism attraction. I certainly feel more conviction about that than I would to start on a new fresh piece of dirt somewhere with only one. So I leave that discussion to them, as I've tried to do. So all I'm saying is, here's an idea that, and I certainly welcome feedback from VMP, from Chappie James, from the county, TDC, and just trying to throw an olive branch out there and see if we can get something done.
Mayor, on this matter of expanding the Veterans Park into Admiral Mason property over there, sort of reminds me of the bathroom learning center. 6 months ago, maybe, the early design for the learning center showed a pretty elaborate structure, but then they said they had to pull back from that because there were infrastructure problems in the remaining vacant ground at B&B. And so have the veterans, have they outgrown the current? I mean, if they're going to put an airplane, a pretty good size, bigger than this room almost, you remember the helicopter flap?
Yep.
And the neighbors to the immediate west and the new neighbors going up at Hawkshaw. That's going to be a pretty heavy lift, you would imagine.
Yeah, literally and figuratively, I guess. But maybe so. But if this is a solution, then I'm open-minded about with Chappie James Foundation. Let's just assume that this got some legs. Then obviously the conversation is between the city, VMP, and Chappie James. Obviously, they're going to need some kind of funding. But I think what right looks like would be the conversation amongst the three parties in terms of where it goes. Jim's question about where it goes in the park. Well, we would have to look at that. Does the plane get included or does it not? What size is the statue? I think we should have an open-minded conversation about, if the goal is commemorating one of our community's greatest heroes, There's lots of ways to do that don't have to be exactly the way we've always discussed it. And what I see right now, I mean, I'm not sure if we've seen what the current financial situation of Chappie James is. I have not. I haven't needed to, because our agreement clearly calls that a project will not begin without showing proof of funds and showing a cost estimate, all of that. So that information was going to get to us as needed. But you know, I don't know if the county in their conversation today asked for an update on finances, but
They did.
They got the runaround again.
Yeah, they got the
So-
answer, at least.
So regardless of where that stands, I would think that doing something in VMP, I think it's very logical for us to assume that it could be done less expensively at VMP than it could be to complete something completely new on empty dirt with no infrastructure, no concrete, no nothing, to go take it to a place that already does that. So again, I have very few convicted opinions about this other than trying to come up with a solution that's good for everybody, or bring this to finality one way or the other. You know, if they don't want to fund it and that's where it ends, then that's where it ends. But I'm trying to be a good contributor to this conversation where I can, and try to bring a viable solution. Does it need to be right next to the bridge? I mean, I would. Our number 2 tourist attraction in our city is behind the military fence. So I don't think it needs to be right because of cars or anything like that. I think any type of memorial at VMP is a very convenient location for people. So, just a thought, and again, maybe I'll be in front of y'all next Tuesday saying that was a bad idea. I don't know. We'll find out, but certainly just trying to throw something out there that gets us to a little closer to finality.
But back to the bathroom,
Oh, yeah.
permanent bathroom, where are we on that?
So yeah, the way you recounted it in terms of what's reached my desk, Tim has been working on that directly with VMP, of course, our public works team. Yes, we've had to relocate it. If you recall, and if that general area, we're working on about a $2 million stormwater project right now. It is not the hardest soil that's ever existed in the city, all through that area. So one of our issues that's another expense increase was kind of relocating it a little closer to where the temporary bathrooms were, kind of right when you get out of the car there, as opposed to closer to the flagpole. So you're right. We've modified that. We've had to gear down design because of costs, like anything else. And that's where I've left that conversation last. But I haven't been briefed on a lot of details of where that stands. I've allowed Tim to kind of run with that, but we can certainly get an update on where it goes. But I've been indicated that we can't do it. I just know that the funds and the costs of stabilizing the dirt, where it's going to go, have eaten into maybe the grandeur of the original scope.
Mayor, on the county commission had a discussion about Baptist Hospital funding today as well. I guess to sum it up is they didn't appear willing to have the $2 million come from the general funds at all. And they also said an idea about maybe trading tipping fees for the demolition debris was also a no-go. So how would that impact if you aren't able to get the $2 million from them?
Well, my comment on that is the reimagination and the future of Baptist Hospital is a regional project, period. And too often we, not just as the leaders of the county and the city, as citizens, think that there's this, really tall fence between the city limits and the county. City residents pay county taxes. The county provides great services for the entire county. The clerks, the animal control, the jail. That is why it's that way. But I don't really prescribe to this idea that if it only happens in the city, then the city's the only participant. And listen, I think, that's the case I've stated to county commissioners is to say, if the ball's at the 1 yard line to be able to get this project done, and what doesn't resonate with you is being a financial participant in a $17 million demolition and the ability to build 500 plus homes if we wanted to. We've given $2 million to lots of projects that wouldn't have that type of impact, I would think. And I've shared my case with that, and I understand some of the concern. Obviously I'm biased. I think that this is a fair request. But if it's not going to be that the county feels that this is a benefit enough to invest $2 million into a monumental multi-generational project, if they don't feel that way, I certainly have to respect that decision. But what I would request is that the county government not be the only government involved in this that profits from the project. And if they decide to not contribute, and we expect more than $2 million of tipping fees to go to the landfill on this project, that would be zero if we didn't do it. I think that's my humble request: is can the county participate with the profits that it will make off of this demolition? And I'm glad to hear, and I expected that would certainly resonate with some more than others, and I think they're doing some of their investigation into that. Obviously, we've had conversations with county staff at the landfill and everything else. April 3rd, ironically, the next meeting is April 3rd, which is when I expected to have this conversation with the county, given our previous conversations that were happening all day yesterday. But that same day is when we expect to pick the demolition consultant. So I'm not ready to speculate on what we would or wouldn't do, because I got to see what the final price is going to be, and I don't know. We continue aggressively to get this done. The donation agreement continues to progress positively. I feel like we're down to very few items in terms of the donation request with Baptist, but it's going to be hard to close on the property until we have the full understanding of how all the financials will work when that transaction takes place. So that's what the month of April is for. We want this done before session. We still expect that to happen. But I guess if you're asking me to state my case, if the county doesn't feel obligated to, whether it's disdain for Baptist, whether it's, again, I have to respect that opinion. But I don't think it's an unfair request to say, while the state government is putting up $7 million and the city is putting up $1 million plus a $6 million grant plus about 15 years of bandwidth that it'll take to make this project happen, then just not to have the county government be the profit $2 or $3 million off of the project, and at least use those funds, as opposed to if there's hesitation to use general funds or LOST, whatever. I'm not sure exactly what funds were discussed today, but so that's I think where we're at right now.
A couple of questions from my teammates, but first a point of clarification with the solicitation information.
Mm-hmm.
What exactly were the folks soliciting? You mentioned uniforms?
Yeah, I think it was just fundraising for uniforms, but it was presented as at a city community center. And whether that's confusion, obviously they didn't, I wasn't there hearing exactly what they said, but we had gotten some reports into our Parks and Rec department that there were people going around representing that they were working for the center or for the city, saying we're raising money for uniforms. Again, we have solicitation permits for a reason. It's just so we know who's knocking on what doors, and so there's protocols and processes if folks want to solicit, nonprofits want to do that. But that is the confusion that we were trying to clear up, and just notifying citizens that if someone's soliciting for money, for something, donations, anything like that, then there is a process, and there is, if it's in the city limits, there's supposed to be a permit for that.
So what does the permit do? If you have a permit, what does that tell a citizen? That they're a legitimate nonprofit?
Correct.
So
Right. We can
that's
verify. What stops someone who's not a legitimate nonprofit from knocking on doors in the neighborhood right now. I think that is that there's a verification process. We can get you all the details on what that is, but there's a verification process through our BTR office, all that at least lets us know, number one, we're aware. Right. So if we hear a police report or someone's downtown, That does not mean it's a little bit like the homelessness issue in the sense that people have rights to be on the sidewalk during the day. That does not mean that we can pick and choose winners and losers of who. If you meet the criteria to have a solicitation permit, then you can have a solicitation permit. But yes, it just makes sure that we know it's happening. So when we hear any reports or anything like that, and to try to do our citizens a service to know that if it is happening, we know who it
You
is.
have something on record of who's doing the solicitation.
Correct.
So if there is a complaint.
Or a misrepresentation,
Right.
right? Well, we said we were collecting donations, but we're actually selling something,
Right.
for example. So it just, better clarification for our citizens, better clarification for the city.
Got it.
And then some of those questions from my teammates, first being, what's your reaction to the citizen survey results? What surprised you and what are your takeaways?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think 70% of the citizens saying that we're going in the right direction is a great place to be. Surprises, I don't know that we have too many surprises. I think some good surprises were, I thought that when we said, how do you feel about these big generational projects, which included American Magic, Baptist, Powell Fox Reimagination, I think the worst one was a plus 30, favorable, and so that certainly gives me confidence. These are things that I think are good for the city, or we wouldn't be working on them. But that all of those projects are considered significantly positive is a great thing, and it helps guide us too. We were more aware about than others, and so that helps us say, well, shoot, maybe we got to make sure we're communicating with our citizens about this project or this particular department. So maybe because it's already been digested in my head, and I can't think of any wild surprises that we had, but it certainly makes us feel good about the trajectory of the city.
And the Cape Coral lawmaker wants to do away with CRAs. What's your reaction, and are CRAs beneficial to the city?
Yeah, I mean, I think doing away with CRAs would be a disaster, and I feel the same way about property taxes. So certainly there's I have great concern about the conversation coming out of Tallahassee right now, and about. Would be curious to hear what the solutions are about how we continue to operate government under those circumstances. So again, these I understand that starting to move through committees. We certainly are stating our case. We've asked our advocates in Tallahassee to be continuing to voice our support for CRAs, for property tax, which is the largest single revenue stream we have. I can't come up with or have heard one functional alternative to property taxes in a state that doesn't charge state income tax. That it's about 30. So you can assume that if it's 35% of our general fund budget, you should expect that this is a move that would defund police, it would defund fire. I mean, there's no way around it for that amount of money. We'll continue to advocate for that as we can, but I think it's more important to really reframe the question. I think if you ask anybody, would they like to pay property taxes or not, I think most of all of us would say, if my choice is yes or no, I'm going to say no, I would like to not pay property taxes. But if your choice is, would you like to pay property taxes, or would you like to have half the amount of people on the ground as police officers in your city because of it, that might change the dynamic of people's opinion. And so all I can hope for is that people understand the value of CRAs, and that our legislators understand the value that property taxes are number one revenue stream, and the severe negative impact that both of those would have on our operations, on our parks, on our maintenance. So if you're saying, I would like my park to be cleaner, but I don't want to pay property tax, that does not work. It doesn't work. Or we don't want CRAs, but this is my high expectation of how the city's maintained and how I feel safe. We're the fourth safest city in the United States. That will be very, very difficult to maintain if we decide that property taxes are frivolous and is just something that we can toss out as if it's just a secondary item. I'm here to certainly defend our ability to operate this city. And if you don't want to pay property tax, you should not expect the city to operate. And that would be my position.
Two other things from my team. Bay County is calling on Florida's Doge to audit them. Is that something you would recommend to the council?
We're having a meeting about that this week. First and foremost, we feel 1,000% comfortable with whatever analysis would need to be done, and what Governor DeSantis has mentioned. So from a, do we fit it? Do we pass this test that's proposed? I feel 1,000% comfortable that we do. So whether I've got to get briefed up a little bit more from my team on what the right next step is. But if the goal is we want governments to run efficiently, we feel very, very confident in terms of the questions about debt service, all of those things. We feel very, very confident where we stand. So more to come on that, on what action we do or don't take. I want to meet with my team about that, but we are more than comfortable that we meet the definitions that our governor is concerned about.
And last thing is, how will the lease of the 15,000 square foot warehouse space at the port to UWF benefit taxpayers and create commerce jobs? Will a similar deal of about $100 a year for port warehouse space be offered to businesses in the private sector?
Well, no offer. There's been no deal for $100 a year. I think it's 1.5 million. So I haven't done the math on that. 1.5 million total. $100 a year would be like $1,500. But the
that's what the documentation that we have says.
Okay.
It's from a item agenda from Agenda Review. It says
Well,
1,500.
I know what the check says because we're taking it right now, and it's 1.4-ish million dollars. So So no, nobody's getting a lease for $100 a year because there isn't a lease at the port for $100 a year. But it's a huge benefit to us to continue to grow the cluster of sailing technology. And we talk about this with ST Engineering all the time. It's not just great to have American Magic here, but the ability for them to build partnerships that they're already building with Pensacola State, with the UWF, for our kids, our local people, to be able to reap the benefits of those jobs is a huge, huge benefit to us. So having American Magic here and these regattas, we had an amazing GL52 event with this past week, is great. The second benefit to that is to continue to have our kids and our youth, our adults, have opportunities to create wealth. So again, we'll happy to expand on the details of that, but it's about a $1.5 million lease, and I'm sure Jason will be happy to clarify.
Mayor, in sort of the reinvention of parking here in the city of Pensacola, you had mentioned earlier some of the things you were moving, or you hoped the team would move toward, could be residential zone parking. Do you have residential zone parking permits in force now? We do. We do have residential in one location, Old East Hill, and that right along Alkeny Street. And the reason for that was that the city had previously permitted those houses to not, back whenever they were built along Alkeny Street and in that neighborhood, there were many that the city many years ago had said, you don't have to build a driveway, it's okay, you can park out front. Well, that certainly, I don't know that that's the decision I would make today, but we certainly have to respect those property owners that were given that promise. And so it's a very small section, but it's again, you'll see them on both sides of Alkeny Street. So we're just simply asking those residents to come show proof of residency, and then giving them a permit where they can park only in those zones. Kind of what you see in the French Quarter of New Orleans, something like that, where you have residents living there, and it just kind of secures to make sure that they have that parking space. That's kind of a legacy thing for the city, but do you see in the future a move in that direction?
We'll always entertain it. There's been a lot of conversation bubbling up about should you do it in the historic district because of all the festivals down there, and there's a limited amount of parking. The difference is in the historic district is that we can't find a scenario where the city allowed on-street parking to count as their parking, right? So in other words, all of those facilities that we can see, and we've analyzed that, have a driveway, right? So, so the goal of resident parking isn't for a third or fourth vehicle to be parking out on the street full time. It's for if you don't have a driveway at all, or that the city many decades ago allowed you to construct a home and count the on-street parking as your parking, then even though it may not be the decision I would have made back then, we don't want to put our citizens, in a tough spot. So we're kind of really starting with the very black and white versions of that, John, like that I just described. So I would never say never on that, but we're going to be doing it in situations that we can certainly show and defend that make a lot of sense. It's not going to be something I expect that we're going to be doing frivolously all over just because someone calls us or something like that. It's going to be a situation like Old East Hill where they didn't need to build a driveway, they weren't given a driveway, they were given a space on the street, and then we've got to kind of honor that commitment.
Mayor, just going back to the Baptist Hospital thing, so Commissioner Kohler specifically asked this morning, he asked West Marino about, I guess, discounting the tipping fees, and the indication was giving that wasn't something that was possible. So I guess
Well, it depends on how you look at it. What he's saying is not possible is we have not requested a discount of tipping fees. You can't discount tipping fees because of FEMA rules, because when we have a hurricane coming through, then FEMA gets the lowest rate that's ever been given, right? The favored nation status, whatever you want to call it, which makes total sense, right? It's to protect the federal government from a landfill coming and saying, well, we want to charge more money than we did. So we are not asking for a request of discounting tipping fees. What we're asking for is a contribution equivalent to the profit that the county stands to make off of the project. That's what we're looking for. And listen, if there's controls that the county wants in place, if they want to be the last 2 million in, and we only need 1.5, I'm okay with that. If they want to say, well, Mayor, we trust but verify. If we only take in $1.5 million of tipping fees, then we want $500,000 back. I'm okay with that too. I'm not asking them. I am not asking for if they don't feel, again, if decision number one is that they don't feel that this is a regional project that benefits the county, which I could certainly argue, but if that's how they feel, I respect that decision. I'm just asking that while the other forms of government around here have identified this as a monumental project that helps the city and the county by putting their own money up, I would just simply request that the county not be the only government that profits off of the project. That's what I'm asking. And if someone would want to say, well, Mayor, the city's going to take donation of all this acreage, what do you mean the city's not going to? When you look at Bayou District Foundation, when you look at purpose-built communities, for example, like in Atlanta, where you've had a large tract like this and it's helped transform a neighborhood and a community, the land is the subsidy. There is no scenario where we're expecting that the city is going to be selling this property for a profit. Just look at all the examples we already have from the Community Land Trust. With the Malcolm Young property, for example, we're donating the property and we're contributing in other ways to help make those pencil. So I fully expect that what this is we're putting our blood, sweat, and tears into this project because we see that the long-term value to create mixed income housing and other important amenities to that neighborhood are worth our blood, sweat, and tears. That's what this is about. So we'll be able to take those 38 acres and throw those into the pot that allow us, because as we all know, workforce housing, attainable housing is non-existent without a subsidy. So all we're simply trying to do as the city is take this property and turn it into the subsidy to transform the community. What I think, I personally, maybe I'm biased, I think putting $2 million and having that impact of, by the way, city residents pay more county tax than city tax, but also when you look at the city limit lines, the county is a stone's throw away from, the city limit lines cut in and out all through this property. There's going to be a community benefit, a neighborhood benefit, a financial benefit to the county if this project continues to move forward, and I can easily defend that. So again, my humble request of the county is if they don't feel that they need to contribute because this doesn't help the county, then I just ask that they not profit off the project and just simply, and I'm willing to agree to lots of different ramifications to ensure that if they think that their money's not valuable or being used wisely or something like that, that they would have some controls in place. I would certainly understand those requests, and I'd be open to that. Anything else? All right, thank you guys so much.